Well, good afternoon, and thanks to everyone for joining us on a chilly day in West Virginia. We hope you all are warm and safe where you are. Thanks for joining us for the West Virginia Folklife Apprenticeship Showcase in Seed Saving and Related Storytelling. My name is Eric Wagner. I'm the Executive Director of the West Virginia Humanities Council. We're the state affiliate of the National Endowment for the Humanities, and I'll be facilitating today. You may have heard our outgoing state folklorist, Emily Hilliard, recently took a new position with Mid-Atlantic Arts. So we congratulate her, and we look forward to onboarding a new folklorist before the end of the year. Before I move on to our introductions for today, I'd like to take a moment to give a little background on the program. Our Folklife program is supported in part by the National Endowment for the Arts Folk and Traditional Arts Program, which helps to support state folklife programs across the country. The West Virginia Folklife program works to document, present, sustain, and support West Virginia's vibrant cultural heritage and living traditions. You can find out more about our work on our blog, wbfolklife.org, and related social media sites, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at WVFolklife. And I'll put these up in the chat before the end of the session. We're here this afternoon to celebrate and to hear from the participants in our second year of our West Virginia Folklife Apprenticeship Program, which is also supported by a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts. The program offers a stipend to West Virginia master traditional artists or tradition bearers working with qualified apprentices on a year-long in-depth apprenticeship in their cultural expression or traditional art form. These apprenticeships facilitate the transmission of techniques and artistry of the forms, as well as their histories and traditions. In the 2020 and 21 season, we supported 7 apprenticeship pairs, including the pair we'll hear from today. The others include Old Time Fiddle with Joe Herman of Hampshire County and Dakota Carper of Capon Bridge, Old Time Banjo of Central West Virginia with Kim Johnson and Cody Jordan, both of Kanawha County. Traditional Appalachian Herbalism with Leanie Hobby of Hampshire County and John Falcone of Hardy County. Sheep to Shawl, the art of raising sheep and creating fiber arts with Kathy Evans of Brewston Mills and Margaret Bruning of Elkins. Agroforestry and Forest Farming with Ed Daniels of Mill Creek and Clara Hazlett of Wellsburg. And our final one upcoming, Home Birth Midwifery with Angelina Nixon of Putnam County and Christine Wyrick of Fayetteville. And of course, the team we have here today with us, Mehmet Oztan of Reedsville and Lafayette Dexter of Fayetteville. So brief introductions first. Mehmet Oztan, PhD, Dr. Oztan is a Turkish seed keeper, farmer, and public scholar who focuses on seed restoration and preservation work. After transitioning from an engineering career, Oztan gardened, farmed, and grew seeds for 8 years in Tampa, Florida, then moved to West Virginia in 2018, where he's been working on preservation and documentation of seeds of Turkey, as well as the agrobiodiversity of West Virginia and the greater Appalachian region. Oztan's 6-acre seed restoration and preservation farm is located in Reedsville, West Virginia. The farm is an experimental learning and seed selection space and a gateway to exploring more than 50 food crops for their cultural significance, culinary uses, climate adaptability, and significance related to food justice and food security. The farm also houses one of the largest independently managed seed collections in Appalachia. Oztan is the co-owner of 2 Seeds in a Pod, an underrepresented, minoritized, family-owned small seed company that specializes in seeds of Turkey. He holds a PhD in civil engineering from Michigan State University and is currently a service assistant professor in Eberly College of Arts and Sciences at West Virginia University. Welcome, Mehmet. Lafayette Dexter, our apprentice in this apprenticeship pair, is currently serving as a Food Access AmeriCorps member at New Roots Community Farm, where he has been employed in various capacities since April 2019. He grew up in Fayette County and leverages his knowledge base of the local communities to perform jobs such as managing a local community garden program, contributing participation with farmers markets in Fayetteville, chairing the Gateway Farmers Market in Smithers, and assisting Sprouting Farms and the Keys, that's Keys, for Healthy Kids groups by facilitating kids markets, and the pharmacy program, that's FARM, pharmacy. Lafayette's also worked with Mehmet to research seed saving for 2 growing seasons now and hopes to eventually spearhead a local seed saving program, which can build an additional sustainable revenue stream for New Roots. So welcome, Lafayette. We're glad to have you both here today. Of course, it goes without saying 2020 was an unusual year, 2021 also an unusual year. The conditions we had to work in required the apprenticeship pairs to adapt so they could safely continue their work. And some, particularly those who are with us here today, whose knowledge is seasonally dependent, have prolonged the year and prolonged the season. Though the concept of the apprenticeship program is face-to-face, and even, as we like to say in our music pairs, knee-to-knee interaction, it was really incredible and inspiring to witness how all of these pairs persevered to make their apprenticeships viable, whether that was through virtual meetings and phone calls, masked and socially distant meetings, sending materials through the mail, or otherwise. In this presentation, Mehmet and Sky will provide an overview of the practices, techniques, and guiding philosophies of this apprenticeship, and then we'll have a Q&A. I will ask some questions as the moderator, and then we'll open it up to the audience. Feel free to submit your questions through the Q&A tab, which should be at the bottom of your screen. And at this point, I will let our apprenticeship pairs take it away. And Mehmet, I understand you're going to lead us off.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks for having us, and thanks for supporting such an, I think, important program. And so do you want me to turn on the PowerPoint, or
I can begin the PowerPoint if you'd like me to do that now.
I can do it.
Okay, sure.
Here, let me
get you in here.
Okay. Can you see the slides?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for that introduction. You actually summarized, I think, pretty much what I have been doing in the last 10 years. But maybe to give a little bit more insight into that, I came to this country in 2006 as a PhD student, particularly to Michigan, and after 4 years of staying in Michigan, followed my partner, who moved to Florida with a job in hand, and then we moved into a house with a backyard garden. And and I'm from Turkey. I'm a Turkish seed keeper, and I grew up in Ankara, a big city, fairly big city, without any access to land or seeds. But this small backyard garden in Florida quickly became a gateway for me to be able to have access back to my roots and culture, a way to connect with my people and family and place that I grew up and such. And it was an important connection. And once that connection was established, and the curiosity added to that, it was a place for me that basically made me want to and grow in that space. Literally grow too, right? So and then that's how I started growing the seeds of my culture, and then started making those cultural connections and talking to my mom on the phone as I grew these seeds of Turkey. More understanding the culinary traditions of my culture more in depth, and then connecting with the food in a reconnecting with food after a disconnect, since I think I had come to United States for 4 years of disconnect, I would say. So that adventure grew, and then I basically transitioned from my engineering career into being a full-time seed keeper and farmer, eventually by borrowing land from a dairy farm in Tampa, Florida. It was a very small plot on their farm that they let me use to grow our seed, seeds of my cultural lineage, and then eventually we leased 2 acres of land right outside Tampa, and also something to note about this was that I was commuting to both locations for 5 years. Actually, the first location was 2 hour round trip to be able to grow these crops, and then continue initiate a process of restoration and documentation of these crops, which wasn't systematically done until that time. Neither by any nonprofit organizations, universities, or any governmental organizations in Turkey. So it initiated this willingness to connect with the culture of food, my cultural food. Also initiated this kind of a project that would become a huge undertaking in the following years. But then in 2018, we moved to West Virginia for both my partner and I accepting job offers, and also deciding to make some changes in our lives, coming to West Virginia. And of course the growing had to continue, but this time we feeling quite tired and wanted to get established, live on the place that I also would grow seeds, continue growing seeds. And eventually, after 6 months of search, we found reasonably level land, and people who are from West Virginia would understand what reasonable level mean. It's not perfectly level, but it's quite workable land in Reedsville, 35 minutes southeast of Morgantown. And now this is our seed growing, restoration, preservation, and documentation space that we also use for educational purposes, and to be able to work with people like Lafayette. Some examples from a variety of seed crops that we have been growing on this farm. Some from different cultures that made and these made their ways into the growing space in Turkey over the last few hundred years, and some of them are older crops, some of them are African crops, some of them have been cultivated and stewarded by the indigenous people of North and South America, regardless, got established in the culture and in the culture of growing in Turkey. And we grow more than 50 food crops on our farm. And the first year I came, I think I grew more than 400 varieties, but then this year I wanted to reduce that a little bit because I'm not getting any younger, and then I can only take care of so much at once. So this year I think we did about maybe 200, but this is also one reason that apprenticeship programs and sharing skills are important, so that other people who are interested in this work also can take over the act of keeping seeds. Let's maybe look at the farming. I'm not going to read everything in detail, but I'm leaving these for you all to read. But I think it's important to mention that 98% of the West Virginia farms are family owned. This also, is associated with the fact that farms are usually quite small, and then a big portion of these farms are homestead gardens. In addition to that, only a very limited number of the seed varieties that originated in West Virginia have been known outside and circulated outside West Virginia, and a small number of these varieties are also commercially available in seed catalogs. And we know that the preservation of seeds is an important subject, especially because we have lost so many to industrial agriculture. And also, taking the seeds, out of their context and disconnecting them from their cultural and racial backgrounds, and turning them into materialistic objects also contributed to this loss. And another important statistical data is, I think, West Virginia's the seed diversity is strongly correlated with the number of farms the change in number of farms, because according to a report that was published by USDA in 1935, there was more than 100,000 farms in the state, whereas in 2018 this number dropped to slightly more than 20,000. And in addition to being majority of these farms owned by white farmers, the dramatic drop also, I think, would be strongly correlated with the loss in seed diversity, because if seed keepers are gone, if the farmers are gone, and if we skip one generation of seed keeping, the seed is very much likely to be not viable anymore. And also, as of 2012, average age of farmers was about 60. Another important factor, and that makes skill sharing important, because young people like Lafayette also, I think, should take over the art of seed saving and teach other people, so that we can continue the tradition regardless of the average farmer age. And some other statistics about food security and people's health, because seeds give access to healthy food options. So making sure that these seed varieties are maintained is strongly correlated with the human health in the state and in the region. I like to mention this. I like to show this slide because it gives so many ideas about the importance of context, culture, place, about my way of thinking, how seed keeping should be done. This is an illustration of Göbekli Tepe, southeast Turkey, and it's a Neolithic archaeological site that was found in 1960s. Excavations were not initiated until 2004. I'm sorry, 1995, and then it continued until 2014. But long story short, this site is thought to be the oldest world's first site on which a belief system was initiated. But not only a belief system, not an entire religion, but a belief system, but also strong evidence was found on the site about how people at this time, and this site dates to 9500 BC, that the evidence shows that the humans transition were in a phase that they were transitioning from hunting gathering and collecting wild grains, wild wheat, which is einkorn, and grinding it to basically make it part of their meal. Hence the origination of einkorn meat initiated not in a site around the site that's not that far from Göbekli Tepe, and so the wheat, as we know today, basically was born in this region. So hence that makes me connect with this amazing crop, which is very important to me because bread is very important in my culture. So we grow a lot of wheat here and grow and harvest that. And then in connection with that, we built a bread oven on our property that would complement this tradition and continue the give seed keeping another elevated meaning. Looking at other crops, I want to show a few more slides and stop there just to give the context how seeds can actually be important to identity. This is a variety that I find out about after moving to West Virginia, associated with the Sutton family or Volbach, West Virginia. The first time I saw it was in a tomato festival competition held in Fairmont, and then I found out about the whole history of it, but no other documentation was available. But eventually I ended up finding that the tomato was so important that it was a picture, the tomato stewards, a couple, Olive Wilson Sutton and her husband, were keeping in the family, so that after they passed away, they basically tomato as they were growing up. Another tomato variety which I believe Lafayette grew this season, which is I think important, another important traditional significant variety from Fairmont area. I confused the two tomato varieties. This one is not from Fairmont, but Volbach, and then this one was the one that won a tomato contest in 2018, which got my attention, and eventually I looked accessed the person who has been growing this variety, initially borrowing the seeds from a woman in Fairmont, and then eventually we found out about the whole story. So Lafayette grew this variety, and I don't know. I'm curious to see what happened with the seeds, if he was able to save seeds from it. Another example is from Turkey, and Lafayette also grew this one. This is particularly important because the steward of this variety fled Bulgaria at one point during and after Balkan Wars to move to Istanbul, and then stewarded this seed for her entire life until she passed away recently. I think about maybe 2010, 10 years ago, she passed away. But this also proves the power of seeds, showing that how, and a significant variety for a Turkish made to West Virginia, and then was grown by Lafayette on their small farm as a part of their seed saving program. And I'm going to just stop here. A couple of pictures that we focused on, of course, all these humanities aspects of things, but there's also the technicality of things, that seeds need to be isolated, they need to be tended in a different way than a regular produce crop, and then the grower needs to make sure that the crop health is maintained well until the seeds are mature, so that that process sometimes is longer. If you are saving a seed from a squash, the seeds are not ready to harvest, but then you need to basically prolong the plant life long enough to make sure that seeds are healthy and plants make it to that stage. And similarly here, you are seeing Lafayette using an isolation technique, which is very simple method. He's tying the flowers with an organza bag to make sure that different tomato varieties in close proximity do not cross with each other, but then they're isolated so that bees don't cross the plant, so that we can make sure that the seed stays intact, and then we keep its integrity by eliminating any cross-pollination issues, so that we can pass the seed to the next following season. I'll stop here and let Lafayette speak.
All right, thank you, Mehmet. Lafayette, feel free and let me know. Pardon me. Let me know when you'd like me to put the content up on the screen as you go.
All right. Yeah, you can go ahead with the second slide anytime you'd like to. I'll go ahead and give a little bit of extra background The folk life is really thorough with our backgrounds, and I think it explained like a lot of what I do and a lot of things that I've already kind of accomplished. But I think that like this particular thing to me is more about like the real reason like why I work at New Roots, which is to be a farmer. So I'm a very beginner farmer. I've only been at it for 2.5 years. And I came here as a result of not having land access. It's really hard as a young person to get into farming right now. A lot of the good farming land really is held by other people. And, you know, we were able to acquire New Roots through the county. And we're now going to transition it into being under like the control of the Agrarian Commons within the next year. And so all of us that work out here are basically just young farmers. Some have degrees, some don't. We're a pretty diverse group. And we just want to farm together and build up programs. And this just happens to be the thing that stuck for me. I ended up going to a seedy talk to listen to Ken Green from Hudson Valley Seed Company speak at WVU, and ended up connecting with Mehmet that way, and then starting this whole entire process. So if you want to go ahead and hit the second slide. So this is kind of the gist of everything that happened this year. With the help of the New Roots crew and our volunteers, I was able to grow 20 varieties of fruit and veggies from mostly Turkey, but also from West Virginia and Korea. All of these seeds were new to me, so I didn't know what to expect of their general health or crop yield. But I will say a few tomato varieties like the Villinger and the Hafsabalik that Mehmet talked about were really prolific. They are still growing right now. Actually, I need to clean them out of the field. And also the peppers were some of the best. I did lose a few varieties to rookie mistakes, but was able to successfully save about 14 of the original 20 varieties. And looking at the next slide. So this is just a few pictures of the tomatoes in the greenhouse at the beginning of the season, to some tomatoes in the high tunnel. Mine actually were not in the high tunnel, but this is the best picture of tomatoes that I have to show you the blossoms, all the way down to putting them in the jars. So what's happening is I keep my seeds in glass canning jars with a bit of dry terracotta to keep the moisture at bay. And then I store my jars in a cooler indoors to keep their temperature somewhat consistent for storage. Eric, if you don't mind showing the video next, I'll give a little bit of background because it's a really quick video that I posted to the TikTok app that shows how I process tomato seed, from extracting the seeds, soaking them in water for a couple of days to break down the jelly that surrounds them, and then cleaning them with a hose and strainer before finally drying them and storing them. Can everybody see this okay? On my end, it's a little bit choppy.
Lafayette, would you like me to try and play that again?
Yeah, maybe one. Oh, they're saying it looks good.
Okay.
Yeah, I was able to watch it.
You can view it on the app too. If you search my TikTok channel, there's only the one video on it right now. But it's FAIR.MANES, so fair.manes. And you can watch that video anytime. I'll eventually post it to the farm Instagram as well. So back to the slides. I feel like I've made this complicated inserting the video in the middle of all the slides. So I did want to talk about a little bit. This is kind of a continuation from the last thing that Mehmet showed. Because I think in that last picture, I was hand pollinating the tiny tomato blossoms and putting the organza bags around them. So this is what it actually looks like. I usually leave the organza bags on until the fruit is present. And then I'll take it off, and then I will put a colored zip tie around the tomato so that I can then like go back and find it. Because when you're seed saving, you don't save every single fruit or vegetable. You just take hopefully the best ones, the ones that you would select for their size or their flavor. Like you'd really want the biggest and best ones, the ones that are like the most resistant to blight, just the healthiest. In the next slide, you can see there in the top right corner, the pepper seeds. I let those dry as well. They're a little bit less labor intensive than fermenting the tomato seeds. You pretty much just cut those guys open and take your finger and take all the seeds out that way. But I wanted to talk about, I really wanted to put the spotlight on the spallot pepper that was originally Mehmet got from a man named Gökhan Erdinç of Istanbul. This pepper is really popular in the Balkans and the villages in northwest Turkey where it comes from. I've noticed there's other seed companies that advertise for this pepper aside from 2 seeds in a pod, like Southern Exposure, which Mehmet explained to me a little bit ago. That was a result of a deal that they had made to grow together. This pepper is really, really good. It's not as hot as a jalapeno. It has a great flavor. It's extremely prolific. They're also still growing outside right now. I can't get them to stop growing. And this is one of the varieties that I hope to grow again at the farm. And the next slide, just to give you all some information about what makes a seed crop kind of different from a production crop. I took this picture to illustrate, on the right-hand side, you have a green bean, and that's about the point that you would harvest a production crop and keep harvesting. In the middle part, you can really start to harvest from seed right there and then dry them out manually, or you can actually just leave them on the vine and let them get to like the last stage all the way on the left, where they're dried out, and then the beans on the inside will develop their full color, and they'll be quite large and ready for storage so that you can plant them for the next year. I think that if you do have production crops, a seed crop goes really well hand in hand. It is a good way to kind of split the workload, because you can really wait to harvest a seed crop, especially if it's something like beans or cucumbers or any type of squash. You wait until it is well past maturity to harvest the seeds from that. Whereas like with the peppers and tomatoes, you would want to harvest those when they're at peak ripeness. All right. And I've got one last slide just because I wanted to share with you all some resources. I have a picture there of a watermelon seed from Turkey. You can find information about any of these seeds that Mehmet grows at his website, www.twoseedsinapod.com. He actually has bios about every variety of seeds that he has. He also has seedy talks, which are, as I explained earlier, with different seed savers. They'll talk about where they're from, what they do, how they do it. All online, partnered with WVU. And they usually will have it, Mehmet will share it from the Two Seeds in a Pod page. At New Roots Community Farm, if you want to learn how to save seeds and you're in the area, you can sign up for our community garden program. In March 2022 is when we'll have our open registration for that. It's like $20 for a plot that's 50 foot long. You can go in it with somebody, and I'm always happy when I'm at the farm to help people out if they're trying to save seeds. And if you'd like to access this presentation again, I'm hoping to snag a copy of the recording to put it on our Instagram highlights. At the bottom, I have my book recommendations. Indigenous Food Sovereignty in the United States has a really good chapter from Rowan White about saving seeds as a Native American. These books are all a part of the curriculum that Mehmet had laid out for me when we started this apprenticeship. Farming While Black is a extremely comprehensive guide to all things farming, but their chapter on seed saving is really, really good and highly recommended. Saving Our Seeds by Bevan Cohen can introduce you to how to save different varieties of different types of plants. It's super simple to read, really easy to look through. And Bevan's a really good guy. He saves seeds up in Michigan. I got to meet him this year while we were hosting a seed swap event at WVU and the Seed Keeper. So, and I think that I will stop there and see, does anybody have any questions for me or for Mehmet?
Yeah, Lafayette and Mehmet, thank you both for this wonderful presentation. And I would encourage our participants to remember through the Q&A tab at the bottom of the screen. You can certainly pass along questions. We have about 20 minutes reserved for questions here at the end of the session. And while any of our participants are getting their thoughts together, if you don't mind, I'd like to begin with one. This has been a really, really wonderful presentation. It's one of those that I come away from slightly frustrated because now I'm very hungry. This doesn't always happen during the apprenticeship showcases. That the picture of the peppers in particular was really striking, I thought.
They're really good.
But I wanted to ask, if we try to describe this apprenticeship to someone who didn't know anything about it, they'd say, well, seed saving, of course, that's agricultural, it's a process, but it's also related storytelling. And of course, the both of you in your presentations modeled the interplay between those really wonderfully. But I wanted to ask you to lean into it a little bit. And I'd like to hear both of you speak to this a little bit, if you might. What is the relationship between storytelling and seed saving? How does one inform the other in your practice?
You want to go first?
Sure. Yeah. For me, every time I get to research a new seed, I get to learn about that seed's history. I get to learn the, who grew the seed first, and their ethnobotany, and, from there can learn any detail about that region that I would really need to know. And as a farmer, this is information that I'm very curious about, and it's information that I need to know in order to produce really good crops. But more than that, I need that information in order to feel connected to that particular variety. Knowing that somebody can spend 49 years growing a particular kind of tomato can tell me as a farmer a lot about why I should be growing that too. And I'm personally hoping to use seed saving as a way to trace my family history back. So that's like a side project that I'm working on this year for the future. So just as I was able to learn about Mehmet's culture, I'll be able to learn about my own through this process, hopefully. What do you think, Mehmet?
Yeah, I think the storytelling aspect of it is really of the seeds is really important, because it's about relations and making meaningful connections of the stewards of the seeds. And the reason that I oftentimes use seed keeping or seed keeper and separating that from seed saver is because a seed keeper selectively, first of all, keep the seeds. Like if there's a bunch of a variety of fruits on the same crop that you see, but then not all of them are fitting into your cultural understanding of the crop, you only select from certain types of fruits. Just as an example, in my culture, stuffing peppers, the understanding of stuffing pepper is something very specific that can easily sit on the bottom of the pot. So, they don't basically get tipped over, and then you can fit them comfortably on the bottom of the top of the pot. So the shape comes into picture, but then what makes it, it's not only about the shape, it's about that cultural connection. And then, in my case, remembering my mom preparing that specific meal in a very specific way. Similarly, then also, who is telling the story of the seed is very important, because there's a lot of that we can talk about racism through seeds, how the crops of Native people, how the crops of African people were basically taken and then made into a industrial agriculture process. So the narratives in that sense become really important, understanding the cultures and the context of place, importance of context of place in seed saving for thousands of years, of course, because many of these crops, if you think about it, squash, tomatoes, peppers, and then in the case of African crops, okra, black-eyed peas, watermelon, are basically, those crops were brought by African people to this country when they were enslaved and kidnapped from Africa. And then other ones, like, as I said, squash, tomatoes, and peppers are native to this part of the world. So even when preparing a meal, understanding the crop is about connecting with all these aspects of seed growers and stewards.
I thought it was really striking in the presentation how seed saving and even food preparation can be a window into the history of a single family or a region or a people or a nation. It's just, I hadn't really thought about it that way before, but it was very evident from your discussions here.
Right.
Yeah. We do have a question from the audience. The question is, I'd love to hear either of you discuss how the terroir, I apologize for my French, of West Virginia, that is its particular soil and climate, how the particular soil and climate conditions of West Virginia might affect the growth and flavor of crops that originated in Turkey.
Yeah, this is a very interesting question. I oftentimes think about this, and my reference point is my food memory, because part of what I do is about tasting food and preparing food with the produce that we grow here on the farm, I'll know if it doesn't end up right. And this of course takes a lot of discussion with my mom. Sometimes it's heated. There are heated discussions, over the phone. She's not here. She lives in Turkey. But in terms of technicality of issues, as farmers, we need to check the soil health and make sure that certain elements are there. So richness of flavor, usually the richness of soil usually speaks to the richness of flavors and how the crops do in this particular climate. But what was striking to me to see, as I said in my presentation, I think we did more than 50 different seed crops in this climate that are also culturally appropriate and important to me. And majority of those crops did really well in our first season, and then that point forward, that takes a lot of experimentation, of course, with one exception, which was eggplant. Growing plants in Florida, eggplant was thriving because it loves humid and hot climates. But here there's the pest that affects its growth, which is a flea beetle that devastates the entire crop. And I was devastated when the crops were eaten because it's a very culturally important vegetable. So that takes a lot of experimentation to find out methods to make sure that the plant completes its life cycle, even if it's not for eating, for the sake of seed saving, so that we can just keep preserving the variety in our seed collection. So yeah, I mean, it's an important factor, to how the composition of the soil and other growing conditions, climate, and such. So
that makes sense. Lafayette, if I could put you on the spot for a second, one of the things that we always like to hear about in the apprenticeship program is what's some piece of information or some aspect of the practice or the history or whatever you'd like to talk about it. What's something you learned as a result of working with Mehmet that you might not have been able to learn or learn as easily otherwise?
Let's see. There's so many things, honestly.
I'm sure there's a lot.
Which thing do I want to talk about? I think it's extremely valuable when you can, like if you're studying history and culture and storytelling, to be able to get the firsthand knowledge from somebody who is like from the area that these seeds came from. I think that was, it could have been way different if I had been doing this seed saving apprenticeship with like a big seed company and they were like, oh, here's some seeds from Georgia, and here's some seeds from Ethiopia, and here's some seeds from Turkey, and here's some other seeds from the Balkans and that region. But they weren't like really, I think that's kind of what made Mehmet a really good candidate for this program was, he's able to like relay his personal story and his personal connection like with these seeds. And I think that was the information that I needed to help me understand seed saving from the perspective that I have now, that, I have a personal connection with seeds out there that could have just as much depth. And, that's, I'm in my first steps of my journey to like finding out what those connections are. And I think that really above all else is what has made my experience unique.
Also makes sense. Well, we have just a few minutes here at the end. While we're waiting for any of the other audience members to maybe collect their thoughts for one or two more questions, I'd like to ask the both of you, and this is from each of your unique perspectives. To speak a little bit about where you see this particular tradition going in the future. Do you see any trends or any changes in the way things are done, how things are done? As we know, some traditions are expanding into much broader types of production. Others tend to getting a little bit more intimate again and relying on individual practitioners. Are there any changes at all that you can see, Mehmet, in the future? And Lafayette, the same question to you. As an up and coming member of the next generation, what sort of changes or what sort of approaches do you see happening in the future?
So it's interesting. I think the identity comes into connects with this question. If you look at the north central part of the state, in the early 20th century, there was a lot of Italian immigrants that came and helped with the infrastructure of the state. And when they came, because the seeds, they were so attached to their seeds, they brought their seeds with them. And then it's not a coincidence to see so many tomato seed varieties in the region, in that particular region, associated with Italian families and have been stewarded by these generations of Italians. It's mind-blowing because it's not even a crop that's native to Italy, but made it was brought to settler colonialism basically made it make it to Europe, and then it was brought back by Italians. Similarly, by other ethnicities and identities, it has been, these seeds have been stewarded. So basically, families are attached to their seeds. They keep growing these seeds. But then again, seeing this dramatic drop from 100,000 small farms to 20,000 is alarming in terms of seed saving traditions. So that's one reason that I try to connect with communities through these, engagement and outreach events, seed talks. We have at the end of 3 years, I have a long list of subscribers that show interest to that event, so that we can, every time we have an event, I can connect these people with the event and the speakers, and so that they can understand, they can have a better understanding of the importance of these seeds in terms of the seed diversity, biodiversity, and seed food justice. So that's why people like Lafayette become even more important, because I am a strong believer in the method of train the trainer, and now Lafayette has been developing these skills. He will have the chance to pass that knowledge to other people. And one issue that I see since I moved to West Virginia is that in addition to not having so many small farms and so few actually vegetable farms, the seed saving tradition is not commonly seen among produce farms. Basically, they year after year, season after season, they buy their seeds from commercial seed sources, rather than say. I mean, there are some farmers that I know and I have been working with that are doing this, but we need to have more farmers to save their own seeds, for a variety of reasons. Improve their self-sustainability. It helps with adaptability of crops in a changing climate, because as you keep saving seeds from a crop, you usually save seeds from your healthiest plants, which means that in those climate conditions, those are the specimens that survived and did well. It's an ongoing work, but also I'm working with a variety of farmers in the state, which have been, I think, doing amazing work in terms of saving seeds for the commercial seed market. So this is something that we are collectively working on, so that we can build a group of farmers that actually can grow seeds, and through our seed company, we sell these seeds. Once someone outside West Virginia buys a seed from us, basically it's an agricultural import item wants to sell out of state, and seeds are can be easily shipped, mailed. Actually these farmers are also contributing to the improving the agricultural import of the state as well. So we are working on that too. It's not only about basically making that seed saving a tradition among these farmers and growers, but also adding an incentive, so that they also feel encouraged about saving seeds. We can give them another reason for to do that. So I don't know if that's helpful.
Very, very helpful. So Lafayette, as a member of the next generation, what are some changes that you see coming in the seed saving and seed bearing tradition?
I don't think that I could really predict better than Mehmet, because being so new to farming too. But I think that the only thing that I really can speak on though is that farming is 100% an experiment all the time. I think that as far as like, what that means for, I think that young seed savers, young farmers are going to be figuring out a lot of, what these developments will be. West Virginia is going to be a really interesting place for that. If we end up getting a lot of seed savers here, because our terrain can be very different. Even the differences between my farm and Mehmet's farm. Here at New Roots, we've got really loamy soil that's a really good mixture of healthy soil and compost and clay, and Mehmet's got like a lot of rocks, and we have more clay and a little bit more sand out here, and we're like sitting on like bedrock in some areas. So and our climate sometimes can be different, because between the two of us, we're almost 3 hours away in distance. So it'll be really interesting to see, as this program gets bigger and we have the same varieties going on at the same time, how our different climates and how our different soils and nutrient components and tactics for caring for plants are all, combined to like to shake things up and make things variable. And as far as new developments go, that's just something that we're going to have to figure out.
Yeah, and someday the stories will be about those shifts and changes too. So quite a lively tradition. Well, that takes us to the top of the hour. Mehmet and Lafayette, thank you both so much for not only for taking the time to share with us your work, but for the work that you put into the program. It was so informative and just such a rich tradition to hear about. I should say too, if I neglected to say it at the top of the hour, we are recording this session and it will be available on the dedicated West Virginia Folklife program and the West Virginia Humanities Council YouTube channels. And we'll of course include all institutional information about Mehmet's and Lafayette's pursuits in the information for that as well. So Lafayette, please help us share it far and wide. We'll be glad to get that along to you. So thanks to all our attendees and to our two presenters. We wish you all the best. Thanks so much. Take care.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.